The morning light crawled gently across the empty streets of Riverbend, a small American town where time seemed to walk instead of run. The police station at the edge of the town still smelled faintly of old coffee and gun oil. Officer Daniel Reeves stood near the window, watching the sunlight spill across the cracked pavement. He had served the town for nearly 20 years, and each morning felt the same, calm, predictable, and lonely. Daniel wasn't the kind of officer who shouted or showed power. He believed in silence, in looking people in the eyes, in giving them a chance to explain before judging. Many called him the quiet cop. Some said he was too soft for the job, but those who really knew him understood that kindness was his greatest weapon. He sipped his lukewarm coffee, glanced at the clock, and felt the stillness of another ordinary day. The radio crackled softly on the desk, just static and the distant hum of dispatchers talking about speeding cars and parking tickets. Nothing unusual. Outside, the world looked peaceful. Children walking to school, a shopkeeper pulling up his shutters, a stray dog crossing the street. But Daniel knew how quickly peace could break. He had seen it happen. How one wrong word, one wrong choice, could turn quiet into chaos. As he adjusted his uniform and clipped his badge into place, he thought of his father, who used to say, "The hardest battles aren't fought with guns, Danny, they're fought with patience." Daniel smiled faintly at the memory. He had lived by those words for years. When his radio finally came alive with a voice from dispatch, it wasn't a call about robbery or violence. It was something softer, smaller, but somehow heavier. Greater than, Unit 4, we've got a disturbance near Elm Street. Neighbors report shouting. Possible domestic dispute. No weapons seen. Daniel exhaled slowly. Copy that, he said into the mic, picking up his hat and keys. The drive to Elm Street was quiet. The morning sun glowed over the roofs, and the wind moved gently through the trees. He thought about how many times he'd been to that street, families arguing, kids crying, neighbors pretending not to hear. When he pulled up to the address, the air was thick with tension. A woman stood outside, arms crossed, her voice trembling. "He's just a kid," she said, pointing toward the small house. "But he's angry, won't listen to anyone. Please, just talk to him before something happens." Daniel nodded and walked up the porch. Inside, he could hear the sound of something being thrown, then silence. He knocked once, firm but calm. "Ethan," he called. "It's Officer Reeves. I'm not here to arrest you, son. I just want to talk." The silence deepened. Then a voice came, young but broken. "Go away. You don't know anything about me." Daniel didn't move. "Maybe not," he said softly, "but I've seen a lot of young men who thought no one did." A few seconds passed. The door creaked open just a little, revealing a pale face, red eyes, and trembling hands. The boy couldn't be more than 19. "What do you want?" Ethan asked, voice shaking. Daniel met his eyes and spoke gently. "To listen," he said. And that's how the last patrol of his life began. Not with a chase, not with sirens, but with a conversation. The house was small and messy. Clothes on the floor, dishes unwashed, a smell of burnt food in the air. Ethan moved restlessly, pacing like a trapped animal. His anger wasn't the wild kind. It was the quiet, wounded type that hides behind words like, "I don't care." Daniel took a seat near the window, keeping his tone calm. "You want to tell me what happened?" Ethan shook his head. "Nothing you can fix. Try me," Daniel said, folding his hands. The boy sighed, rubbing his face. "You think wearing that badge makes you understand people. You don't know what it's like out there. Nobody cares unless you do something crazy. You shout, you fight, then they finally notice you." Daniel nodded slowly. "That's true sometimes. People see anger faster than they see pain." Ethan looked up, surprised by the words. "Yeah, maybe." The silence grew again. Outside, a lawnmower started somewhere, and the sound filled the gap between them. Daniel didn't rush. He knew that sometimes silence spoke louder than questions. Finally, Ethan muttered, "It's my mom. She works 2 jobs. We barely pay rent. My dad left. I tried to stay clean, but..." He stopped talking, biting his lip. Daniel waited. "But they found me," Ethan finished. "Who?" Daniel asked quietly. Ethan's eyes darkened. "Some guys. They hang around the old parking lot by the river. They said they could help me make money fast." I said no at first, but they don't take no easy. Daniel's chest tightened. He had heard stories like this before. Young men cornered by promises of quick money, trapped before they even realized it. You didn't join them, did you? Ethan shook his head. Not really. I ran last night. That's why they came here this morning, banging on the windows, shouting. My mom was scared. I just lost it. Daniel stood up slowly, walked to the window, and looked out at the quiet street. The sunlight had shifted, turning softer, almost sad. Ethan, he said, turning back, you made one right choice today. You didn't go with them. That's something. The boy gave a bitter laugh. Doesn't feel like it. They'll come back. Daniel's voice was steady. Then I'll be here. Ethan stared at him, confused. Why? You don't even know me. Because someone once stood for me when I didn't deserve it, Daniel said softly. I'm just returning the favor. The boy blinked, as if seeing him for the first time. Outside, a police siren wailed faintly in the distance, fading into silence again. The calm before the storm was breaking. Night fell slowly, painting the town in shades of silver and blue. The air felt heavy, carrying a quiet warning. Daniel sat in his patrol car near the corner of Elm and River Road, engine off, eyes on the shadows moving through the trees. He had called for backup earlier, but no one had arrived yet. Maybe they didn't believe the threat was real. Maybe they were too far away. But Daniel had a feeling those men would come, for Ethan, or for revenge. Inside the house, the lights were dim. Ethan and his mother sat together, the tension between them melting just a little. Daniel could see them through the window, a mother holding her son's hand like she was afraid to let go. Then he saw it, a dark car slowing down near the streetlight. The windows were tinted, the headlights dimmed. Daniel's pulse quickened. He stepped out of the car, hand on his belt, and called out, "Evening, fellas. You're a bit far from the highway." The door opened. 3 men stepped out, rough, hooded, their voices low and cold. "We're just looking for a friend," one said. Daniel's voice stayed calm. "Then maybe you should call him. This is a quiet neighborhood." One of them smirked. "You gonna stop us, old man?" Daniel didn't answer. His eyes stayed on them, reading their movements. The moment stretched thin, like glass about to shatter. Suddenly, one man reached for something under his jacket. Daniel shouted, "Hands up." A shout, a flash. The night cracked open. The street echoed with chaos. One gunshot, then another. The sound bounced off the houses, terrifyingly loud in the stillness. A window shattered. A dog barked somewhere. Daniel ducked behind his car, returning fire. Not wild, not panicked, but trained and measured. His only thought was to keep the family safe. After what felt like forever, the dark car screeched and sped away, vanishing into the night. Daniel stood still, his heart pounding. His shoulder burned. He'd been grazed, but he barely noticed. He looked toward the house. Ethan was at the door, pale, frozen. "You okay?" Daniel called out. The boy nodded, eyes wide with shock. For the first time in years, Daniel felt alive, and afraid. Not for himself, but for what came next. By morning, the world was quiet again. The sirens were gone, the neighbors silent, the air washed clean by fear and relief. Daniel sat on the porch, a bandage on his arm, a cup of coffee in his hand. His uniform was torn, his eyes tired, but his heart was still steady. Ethan sat beside him, looking down at his hands. "You could have died last night," he said quietly. Daniel smiled faintly. "I've come close before, but last night wasn't about dying, it was about living for something." The boy hesitated. "I told the detectives about the men. They'll find them." "I know," Daniel said. "You did the right thing." There was a long silence between them. The kind that didn't need words. Then Ethan said, "I don't know what I'm supposed to do now." Daniel looked at him with tired but kind eyes. "You start again. You help your mother. You walk away from the noise. Every step you take in peace is a win." Ethan nodded slowly. "Will you be around?" Daniel chuckled softly. "Maybe, maybe not. But remember, being strong doesn't mean you fight, it means you don't let the darkness change who you are." The sun began to rise, spilling gold light across the cracked road. The same road that had seen fear and gunfire only hours ago now shimmered with warmth and hope. The world was quiet again, just like the morning before. As Daniel stood up and walked toward his patrol car, Ethan called out, "Officer Reeves." He turned. "Thank you," the boy said. Daniel smiled, touched the brim of his hat, and replied, "Stay safe, kid." He drove off slowly, the town stretching before him like a promise. The radio crackled with another call. A lost dog this time, small, harmless, ordinary. He smiled to himself. Maybe peace wasn't the absence of danger. Maybe it was the courage to face it, and still stay kind. And so, the last patrol of Officer Daniel Reeves ended, not with a victory, but with redemption.